So here we go.
All right, so kind of like Edward said, I'm gonna be talking about teens and specifically the use of technology with teenagers, and this is a kind of weird and scary place, but the truth is that there hasn't been enough time to study the effects of how access to the internet, social media, and limitless information impacts teenagers. But what we do know is not good. It's not good to let your teenager have unbridled access to the internet and to the various things that can be found on there. So what I wanted to do is I just kind of want to run through some things just to bring them to your attention. You have heard of many of these things, but I just want you to be made aware of them. So this is something that if you have young kids, something that you need to be very wary of as you approach that in the future. And if you have teenagers right now, it's something that maybe you're just unaware of. So first off, I wanted to cover... So just boundaries for technology. The first thing is cyberbullying. 59% of teenagers in the United States aged 13 to 17, they've reported that they've been bullied or harassed online. 59% of kids. That's 6 out of 10. And so that's most teenagers experience some form of cyberbullying. Most of the time, cyberbullying came as a direct response to how somebody looked. So that's if they posted something online, like a picture of themselves, or somebody saw them at school and then made fun of them after the fact. An unfortunate reality is that teenagers who experience online bullying are 4 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts, ideation, or have attempted to take their own life. 4 times more likely than the average. And that's 60% of kids have experienced this. And so 60% of kids are 4 times more likely to have suicidal thoughts. That is a blatant reality. The other thing that is kind of also scary is, one, like your kid could get bullied through the internet, but the other thing is that teens can be coerced into bullying other people. There have been multiple times and where teenagers have been like pulled in to like say something negative about somebody else's photo or message somebody to like spread a rumor or something. Teens can be coerced into doing something depending on who their friends are, kind of like their influences. There is recent legislation that has made it so that people who engage in cyberbullying are able to get charged with a literal crime for cyberbullying. It's not everywhere yet, but every state is adopting legislation as we speak that is moving towards that. I know right now, if you are caught cyberbullying in California, immediately it's a misdemeanor. And then after that, it's like everywhere else is kind of adopting those as they go on. Right now in Ohio, I don't think there is one yet, but we can expect one in the near future. Another reality that unfortunately we have to consider is online predators. A lot of social media sites. There are a lot of social media sites where you can be 100% anonymous. So things like Reddit, X, which is the new form of Twitter. So if you've ever heard of Twitter, which I'm almost positive you have, that's X now. Tumblr, Pinterest, and Instagram. You can make an account on any one of these, and there's no way to verify who you are. You can go in right now, today, you could create a random account on any of these, put a different picture of somebody else, give it a random name, and make it appear as though you're somebody you're not. And so what happens is, there have been multiple cases where predators have attempted to groom kids through the use of social media, whether that is like messaging them and trying to get them to reveal sensitive information, such as where they live or what school they attend. But it's even gone far enough to like have a teenager share naked pictures of themselves with a predator. And that's a reality. That has happened before. And the truth is, and this is something that you just need to be aware of, teens cannot be sure of who they're talking to online. It can be somebody who is a predator, and teens don't always consider that or think about that. So I would say just beware of these. Be aware of them, but also beware of them. Like I would shy far away from them. My personal suggestion. The next thing is sending or receiving nude photos. It really sucks to say, but that is a reality that's happening amongst teenagers. Teenagers take naked pictures of themselves to send to other kids, and there's been tons of cases where teenagers have taken a naked photo of themselves or sent one, and then those photos are distributed throughout the entire school. That's just a reality of something that has happened. And I think that like every one of us are on the same page. That's unacceptable. Like if you found out your teen was taking like a nude photo of themselves, that's unacceptable. And that seems obvious. But to kids, they're young, they're dumb, they make bad decisions, and they go based off of what they feel or what they're being, pushed towards by sometimes their peers and the people around them. And also, I think sometimes teens are lied to by certain things. For instance, Snapchat. Snapchat is an app that is literally made off the premise of, hey, communicate with other people by sending them photos that disappear. That's literally like the advertising behind Snapchat. It's, hey, you can take a photo of yourself and then you can set how long it lasts on somebody else's phone. And so teens, when that happened, teens were taking pictures of themselves in naked, like being naked, and people were screenshotting it. And it's like immediately they now have that picture and they can send it to whoever they want. And that was something that Snapchat just put out there as like a pro. They were like not like specifically that teens are taking naked pictures of themselves, but like, they were like, hey, it's just cool, your picture's there, but then it's gone, and it's lost to the ether. But the reality is, it's not. Even photos that have disappeared on Snapchat are still able to be pulled up because they're held in Snapchat's database. So in reality, that's like another thing that kids just don't necessarily understand what is going on. And the truth is, this is something that probably not everybody's super familiar with, but sending nude pictures has somewhat turned into like a meme culture idea. This is something that kids will joke about a lot. Like they'll be saying like, oh, send nudes. Like that's something that they will say regularly as like a joke to one another. But that's like an unacceptable thing to joke about. That's making light of something that's very serious. And so that's something that, like, obviously if you find that, put it down. Make your kid aware of how serious that is. But this is something that, like, this is a reason that if your kid has a cell phone, or if you plan on giving them a cell phone in the future, think through having a cell phone agreement with them, or maybe just saying with your kid, hey, if you have a cell phone, I get access to it. I know every one of your passwords. Like, you need to tell me your passwords, and I'm going to check your phone regularly, because things like this are extremely dangerous for the kid. I actually just heard of a thing the other day where somebody received a naked picture on their phone. It was a teenager. The mom was really upset, so she called the cops because she didn't know what to do. The police showed up to her house, and she was like saying, like, I want you to go get the person who sent this photo to my daughter. And the people were, the cops had like a complete, like they misunderstood the situation, and they were going to try to arrest her daughter for possession of child pornography. Because they're under 18 and they're taking naked pictures of themselves, that's child pornography. So it's a scary situation, but that is a possibility. Kids can have that on their phone. That is child pornography. There's consequences for that are very, 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 like, very strong. There's jail time, stuff like that. But the thing is, beyond just taking pictures of themselves in compromised positions and things like that, is pornography is a reality. A disturbing statistic is that the average age that kids are first exposed to pornography is the age of 11. 11 years old. And that's not just pictures, that's like videos, that's the fullness of it. It actually said that the average thing, one of the things is that kids are not just exposed to just whatever pornography, like violent pornography that has violence in it. And so that's just disturbing. But the truth is, 66% of American male teenagers reportedly watched pornography intentionally at some point. 66%. 39% of American female teenagers reportedly watched pornography intentionally at some point, and that was from 1,000 kids that were polled. That's of 1,000 kids. And that's America. This is America where, our idea of a sexualized body is fundamentally different than a lot of other places in the world. There's another place in the world, Germany, where there's not a lot of stigma around it. So kids are probably more likely to not lie about whether or not they've watched pornography. In Germany, 93% of male teenagers reportedly intentionally viewed pornographic movies online, and 52% of female teenagers did the same thing. And so the reality is that kids, because of the fact that they have phones and technology, as much as those things can be useful because they have access to information, At the same time, they can have access to pornography. And I want to warn you that, you've probably seen advertisements or something to suggest that there's blockers that you can purchase that can, make it so that your kids cannot access that stuff. They almost never work. You can have a blocker on your phone, but the thing is, if you just keep going and keep going and keep going, it's going to miss something eventually. It can't block everything, is the reality. And so pornography is extremely easy for kids to access. One of the most porn websites, there's literally like a law that says you must require that, verification that you're over the age of 18 in order to get into the website. Most of the time it's just, hey, choose how old you are. Here's a calendar. When were you born? And kids can lie about that literally so easy. 1952, and then they're in. And that's the reality of like what defense there is from the other side. So our defense for kids going in and trying to find pornography needs to be very, very strict. Certain social media websites, like old Twitter, so X now, Tumblr and Reddit, sexually explicit material is allowed to be posted. So if your kid is surfing through Reddit or Tumblr or Twitter, they can just find sexually explicit images right there with a link to a video or to something else. And that's just on social media. So allowing your kid just access to social media is just, it can be bad. And another thing that is really common recently, and this just occurred to me right now as I was thinking, is there are now apps that are specifically like pay to see inappropriate images and stuff. And there are people who have social media accounts where they just like advertise, hey, click on the link and you can go see my pictures. And that's the reality. And so social media is a danger for teenagers, and access, that kind of unbridled access is very, very scary. And so one thing just to kind of remind you of just like kind of how high stake this is that teens' brains are high in plasticity. A teen's brain, when they learn something, it kind of like carves out a path in their brain, and that's the way that their brain continues to operate as they get older and older. And by the time you're 25, the plasticity of the brain basically goes away, so that you are kind of set in stone. Not really, you can still relearn things, but it's like those habits, those rhythms, and forming pathways in the brain specifically for pornography for teenagers can have lasting negative effects. Tons of them, which is, difficulty in marriage, unrealistic expectations for dating or for marriage. In a lot of cases, impotence in young men. Like, this is just a reality. Pornography does have a real impact. And the funny thing is, like, you hear churches often talk negatively about pornography, but there are now secular websites that are not attached to any religion at all that say, fight the new drug. That's literally what they call it. And so pornography is extremely dangerous. And that's something that, you can't just rule it out. Oh, he's probably not watching it. It says 93% in Germany are, and they probably didn't lie about it. So just something to consider. Furthermore, it's possible for your teen to try finding validation in online communities. So, besides the whole pornography and all the rest of the things that can be terrifying there, your kid, especially teenagers, because of the fact that they're going through puberty and they're experiencing such a rapid time of change, their emotions are often out of whack. They're often confused. They feel misunderstood. And so what they're looking for is validation, acceptance, or, some kind of encouragement. And so what happens a lot of the time is that kids try to find validation in online communities. And one of the ways that this is shown to be kind of like accelerating negative things in teenagers, I would recommend the book on the back, Embodied by Preston Sprinkle, which kind of covers transgender identities and things like that. There's something that he talks about in the book called ROGD, which is rapid onset gender dysphoria. And it's this idea that a teenager who goes online and feels weird, they feel kind of like, oh, I've never felt this way before. I'm experiencing puberty and all these things. I don't know what to expect. I don't know what to think. They go online, and other people who are kind of like predatory, they pretend to be their friend, and they suggest, hey, the best thing you can do if you feel weird is to explore that. I actually have a quote here from the Preston Sprinkle book. from somebody he interviewed called Helena. And she said, I eventually started reading these stories on Tumblr and identifying as trans. So she would go on Tumblr and she would read people's stories about their experience. And she would be like, well, I kind of feel like what they're describing. I kind of like, I also feel kind of like a social outcast or a pariah or something. And so what she did was, because of the fact that she read these stories and she felt like some sense of connection to that person, she was like, oh, well, maybe I'm trans too. And so instead of just thinking, oh, maybe I just need to be encouraged or helped by somebody to grow into the body that is changing that I'm in, the reality is that some of them are pushing them to make big decisions, such as like, oh, maybe I'm just trapped in the wrong body. She has another quote in there. She says this, she says, on Tumblr specifically, there's this attitude that if you have the slightest inclination that you might have a gender identity confusion, the healthiest thing that you can do is to explore that and experiment with that. That's like so dangerous, because the experimentation that they're talking about there is going on and saying something to a counselor. And I know that like this isn't necessarily the case in America, but in Canada, if you say something to a counselor about like you have gender dysphoria or something, the first thing they suggest is puberty blockers, which immediately starts throwing into their body different kinds of estrogen and testosterone for whatever that is that they're feeling. And that often kind of like confuses the puberty process, which makes them even more confused and frustrated and the whole thing, and often leads to terrible things that kids, these decisions that kids can make. And so this is a possibility. Originally, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they, I think it might have been Edward, I can't remember, but he was saying that, I think maybe it wasn't Edward, I don't know, I'm not going to put him on the spot, but they were saying that originally, a long time ago, that gender dysphoria was a real thing, and that it was most often found in men, and it was like something where a man felt like he just was in the wrong body or something, but that is completely and totally flipped now to where we are currently with access to the internet and all these other things. The most common people who experience gender dysphoria on any level right now is a middle school girl, and that's the people that they're going after. And so this whole thing, although argued back and forth all over on the internet, this is a real thing that is actually going on. The numbers kind of just show. It's like, before there was an internet, gender dysphoria was very low. Now that there's the internet, it spikes. So all of this to say, and the reason I shared all this information with you about technology, and the intention was to scare you, is because this is real. This is something that kids have access to right now. And so we as people need to be very careful with what our kids have and the way that we approach that. So one, if you have a kid who doesn't yet have a cell phone, or if you have a kid who has a cell phone, one of the best things you could do is have a cell phone agreement. We have some cell phone agreements. I think, are they in the packet? In the back of the packet, if you look through, there's some examples for cell phone agreements. I would highly recommend you go through and read them. They're really good, and they kind of just set expectations for your kid and for you, which is really good. It kind of helps your teen to kind of identify with you a little bit in that. And then the other thing is I wanted to show you that there are other options besides smartphones. You usually think that, a dumb phone doesn't work nowadays. But there's something called the Light Phone 2 that I recently did after doing a little bit of research. And the Light Phone 2 looks like that. It's this tiny little phone. It's like this big. But it has all of these tools on it, which are super valuable. And it comes on a black and white Kindle-type screen. So it has an alarm, a calculator. You can still have directions. So if your kid is lost and they have a car and they're driving, they can still find their way home. It is a simple music player, notes/voice memo, calendar, and podcast tool. No access to social media, no access to the internet completely, but they can still have an alarm to wake up for school, calculator to do simple deductions and things like that, directions. They can still listen to music, they can still listen to podcasts, they can set things on their calendar with reminders and things like that, and notes/voices and memos. It gives you the phone, the smartphone, with the tools rather than the unrestricted access to the internet. And so that's a great option. I already talked to Hannah, and I was like, we're for sure finding a phone like that when our kids get old enough. And so that's one way that I think could be really helpful. And it's not just the Light Phone 2. There are other options as well. Just do your research, find which one you think works for you and your kid, and I would highly recommend it. And then the last one is just cell phone agreement. Highly recommend you read through it. I think that it can be extremely valuable because protecting our kids I know it's important to me. I know it's important to you. And the world is speaking to them. The world is teaching them things. Kind of like what Edward said, it's catechizing them in a different way. It's teaching them things that we fundamentally disagree with and that are wrong about life and about God and about just everything. And so being careful with this stuff can really help impact your kid in the right direction in the future. So with that, I think I'm handing it over to Rebekah. And Jerry. Okay, cool.
All right, just a few things on technology, and then we're going to talk about some other influences, because technology is not the only one in your kid's life. But as far as little kids go and technology, I mean, thankfully we don't have a lot of social media to contend with, but do understand the science. When kids have tablets or whatnot, it releases dopamine, they like it, it feels good, it's addictive. So you probably have found yourself spending more time on your phone than you thought you were going to. Kids cannot set their own boundaries. They're not capable of finding the correct boundary, so it is up to you to do that. And just think of it, I like to think of it like a busy intersection. When your kids are young, you are not going to send them into the street. You're going to hold their hand, pay attention, you're alert, you're doing your research. Think about it like that, hold their hand through it. And have a plan for it, right? And I don't think that we should think of like tablets and things like that as something that's like a right to a kid. I think we could think of it as something that is more earned. It has limitations and supervision, some kind of agreement between the kids and the child, and it should align with your ultimate goal and your hopes and your dreams. So if you're thinking of it like, well, what would be a good reason for them to have it? Like, do we think about it like that? What are they going to gain from the time that they're spending on it? And what else am I introducing along the way? And is that worth it for what it's doing? So just thinking about it in that way. But there are so many influences that we have for our children, and the biggest influence is us, right? We're the biggest influence, right? We're the biggest one. So we wanted to talk about a few things on setting up. You want to talk to us a little bit about our words and our marriage? And
Zack, first of all,
I think you might be off.
they give me the one that's not working. There we
go.
go. By the time he's old enough, they'll install a chip in the brain. There won't be phones, okay? They're going to be gone as fast as our world moves. And I think that's something for us to remember. Our world is moving so fast. There's a place called Mike's. I don't know if anybody's ever eaten there. If you've gone to Kent State, you've probably been there, Mike's restaurant. They hire a lot of Kent State students, and hang in there. You're wondering what's this have to do with anything. I like breakfast, and I would go to Mike's quite a bit. Anytime I was in that area, I always went to Mike's. And they had something on the menu, and it was called the dump. And it was everything you could possibly have for breakfast: sausage, bacon, ham, cheese, you just name it, eggs. It's just any ingredient you would have with breakfast, gravy. And they would just pile it on. And it came out on your plate, it was just a big mass, and it looked like somebody had dumped it right on this plate. That's what's happening to you guys. Your life, it feels like everything's been dumped on you. You're moving fast. Technology's moving fast. Your kids are being introduced to stuff faster. And if you're not careful, you can begin to think that, like, okay, where do I turn now? It seems like, and today you turned the right direction. You came to something like this. That this is, I'm there taking notes like, man, we already have our next one put together. This has been amazing today. But you have so much stuff going on. But you are the filter. You have to stop and think about yourself that way. All this stuff's getting dumped on you, and if you're not, all this stuff, you're sorting out life, but you have little lives all around you that you have to sort out for them. And you have to filter for them too. So in the midst of all this stuff that's going on, it's important that all these influences that are coming, all these influences that are coming into your life, that you sort out yours. That you have to be real intentional about your marriage. You have to be real intentional about being a learner. Like, you can't fall asleep on this technology. Like, When you're reading some of that stuff, you're like, whoa, are you kidding me? Like, and you can't just count on the youth pastor keeping track of all this stuff. So, like, you've got to continue to be intentional. You got to continue to be a learner. You got to continue to be spiritual. You have to continue to be honest. Like, whoa, let's just stop for a minute. Our lives are too crazy, and our kids are suffering from that. Let's be honest, and let's try to kind of resort out. Do we have to keep up with every sports program going on? Does our kid have to be, like, you have to sort this out. I can't answer that for you, but you have to be honest and stop and figure out, is the time it's taken off your calendar worth the trade? But if you don't stop and be honest with this, before you know it, you're going to click your fingers. Your parenting's going to be over. Love these things up here. You should read them. Love the fact that Orange introduced that it's just a phase, that your kids are going to go through phases, and one day all the phases are going to be over. You're done. All these little books there's time on the clock to click through. And so you're still the major influencer in their lives. And so you have to be really intentional in your own life, and you have to be open. So, because what happens if you don't watch out, and your kids are going to walk out one day. You are setting the parameters for them to think about what marriage is and what family is. Like, you're writing that book for them. Our hope, like my parents, I love my parents, man. Like, often I'll drive down the road and I'll think, if I could just have one more conversation with them. Like, a picture will pop up, or one of my kids will send a picture out. Oh, I'm not like, oh my gosh, okay, hold back the tears, pull it back. It's like, I love the relationship with my parents. My parents were amazing parents, but you know what? My parents wanted me to be a better parent than them. You know what my dream for my kids? That they would be a better parent than us. And they are. Like, I see the stuff they're doing with their kids. I'm like, God, this is amazing. Like this, like my wife had two things that we were on. We wanted faith and family. That was it. Like, we weren't trying to create anything else. Like, that was it. And we devoted. And we were on the same page in our marriage, that our family, like, that's what it was built around. We had Friday nights where, like, on the weekend, we fought all the way through high school. Hey, we're going to be a family. We're going to do stuff. They didn't want to be with us on the weekend. But you know what? Like, we're going to be together. You know, that's just how it is, because, when they became adults, we wanted to come home and just independently stop by our house. And that will probably keep me from ever retiring. But they keep coming by, and we keep having dinner, and the grandkids are all over the place. You have to be really intentional. You are a major influencer. Watch your marriage. Watch your relationship with the Lord, because it's a big, big influence on her. Okay? And that's what's going to hold back some of this. The internet and all that, it's not going away. That's why you need a platform. That's how you need to know your kids. You need to be able to have the conversations. Okay.
So we have just a few more minutes. Something that you guys were so good at.
She was saying that for me, not you guys. Okay. All right.
You as parents was creating fun, and fun over time creates connection. Can you talk to us a minute about that?
Yeah, just a second. Like I'm an event guy. Like, if you don't know anything else about me, like, I love big events, stuff like that. Melinda was amazing at every day having fun with the guy. I'd come home and there'd be blankets over stuff, and they'd be making their own home. Like, now I know you got, $150 tents you buy, but they still can't replace pushing two chairs together, finding a big blanket and throwing it over top of it and crawling under there and pulling all the cushions off the couch. Your furniture will survive and all that kind of stuff, and your house will have a little bit of disarray. But that's just fun. And then because of ministry, my weekends are really busy, but I had Mondays off. So, all of you have a calendar, You had to figure your calendar out. I figured my calendar out. So we went miniature golfing on Monday, and we had lunch together. And it was perfect because everybody else was working, and I only work 1 day a week. And so, that's what we would do. But it doesn't have to be some over the moon thing. And we're okay with vacations, think that's a great thing. But you have to build little things in, like a water balloon fight in the backyard. Like nowadays, it's even easier. You hook it up and it makes like 890 all at one time, and they all fall off. But you can, on the holidays, it would fall on the Olympics. Again, I'm the event guy. Like I would plan, okay, we're gonna have our own Olympics. Then I would start creating events like, okay, we're gonna have a marble champion. And so I'd buy everybody a bag of marbles. And we played pickleball back before people knew what pickleball was. I saw these 4 paddles at Dick's. I said, okay, I want to buy that. That looks really interesting. So I went around finding all these games, and we had trophies, and we had brackets, and all this stuff was going on. And every so often a picture will pop up in their stuff because I barely know how to turn my phone on, and they'll send it to me. But, it was just little stuff along the way. Your parent cue. Yeah, I know it. You're like, he knows something about parent cues. I actually read these things. And I'm not even a parent anymore. But when I bump into a parent, I want to help somebody parent better than I parented. And there's a lot of room for you to parent better than I did. Like, I look back and think, oh, man, if I'd had a shot at something like this, or somebody was sending me parent cues, like, I just know I would have done better. It says, so instead of adding one more thing onto the long list of things you already do, that's the dump, what if you simply make a little bit more of the time you already have? What if you simply made a little bit more of the time you already have? You got a clock. Just make a little bit more of it, and you'll make a mark, and you'll be an influencer. Fun influences. Laughter is a beautiful thing. So I know we're about out of time.
Okay, give us 1 minute on boundaries around your own.
Now they're giving me the amount of time.
Oh,
you
well,
noticed how this
it's just what we have left.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Around words and like some guiding thoughts about language in the home.
Okay, words. Now I have to do 2 things at once because I don't have very much time. Bingo, got that up. I want to read that. Words. Words are important. Anytime I'm teaching on words, I always talk about there's 2 things words do. They build up or tear down. And that is so easy to evaluate. Like you drive by somewhere, you know if somebody's putting the building up. And I grew up in a demo family. My dad started a demolition company. My brother still runs it. I love going by there. Why? Because you can so easily tell. They have a big machine there and goes, bam, man, smoke is flying everywhere, stuff's flying everywhere. You can tell when something's being torn down and when something's being built up. You can tell in your kids' eyes the minute you say it. You can tell in their emotional impact that it's had in their lives, which one you're doing. Okay? So figure that out. We want less demo, and every so often you've got to have a little bit of demo so you can build a stronger, these people in Texas, this is a really big thing. They go in these neighborhoods that have beautiful trees, but small houses, because that's back when they built them in the 60s. Well, they tear the little house down and they want to keep the trees. They build this beautiful thing in its place. They tear something down with the idea of building something up. Okay? So sometimes you have to have a difficult conversation. You can't just blow smoke. You eventually have to talk to them. So you do a little bit of demo, but you know what you're going to do. You're going to spin that. You're going to start building something on it. So, that's what, you're going to help your kids find their place in life by the words that you speak into them. And if you speak words of life, you're going to create security. You're going to create confidence. You're going to create a place where, you know what, no matter what the world throws at me, I know I have a home that I can go back to, that I will always find love. I will always find encouragement. We all need an anchor. You know what half the problem in our world is today? That people have been cut loose, the strings have been cut, and they're just floating off. They have no bearing point. Your words of building up, occasional tear down to build up. You know what you do? You create a place for them to memory to come back, and a place for them to rebound, and a place for them to work off of. So your words are really important, and it's not always the words, the tones. You're saying the right words, but you're saying them the wrong way. Guilty.
Tone says a lot. Tone says
'cause
more than words sometimes.
Because I'm intense, man. Like even when I'm saying something nice, people go, "Are you mad?" No. So excuse me, let me calm down a little bit. Actually, because I'm just naturally kind of get cranked out there. So it's time for me to take my medicine, okay? No. I take medicine. Every time I hear that, I think, where's the medicine? I've got to pop some pills. They're trying to keep me alive on them. Okay, all right, I want to read this, and then I'm going to hand it over to you. And thank you, Edward, and your team for inviting me to come over here. We're in Proverbs. And the whole campus last week, we passed it out. We're on a 30-day Bible reading plan together. And we've set it up as a staff, and we're asking them to read a proverb, a chapter every day this month. And we're asking them to read a couple of other passages. This was in our reading. And this really convicted me this week about how easily it is when you get the dump to see, you need to go on a date so the two of you stay together. You need to remember you're in this together. Together like the first time you thought, I love this person. Like, I think I'm going to get the nerve to tell them I love them. And then where it goes from there. That you guys, you got to stay together if you're going to be that strong influence. And so in this proverb, there's some X-rated stuff in the Bible too. It's not just on the internet. And so in Proverbs chapter 5, and you can go find it, but this is verse 19b. The first part's really X-rated. So my kids are here, so I don't want to read it. But this is what it said, and I was reading it this week. May you ever be intoxicated with her love. Life, and Satan wants to pull you apart so you forget to be intoxicated with each other's love. And that opens the door for the wrong influences.
For sure. Yeah. Nice work. Thanks, guys. Thank you, Pastor Jerry and Rebekah and Zack and Lori and Melinda for all the work you guys did and all the research and the wisdom brought in. And so here we are at the end of all these hours. We had all this information thrown at us like drinking from a fire hose, as people say. So the next question is, what do we do with it? And so I just want to challenge you, take the conversation guide or follow-up guide. There's one for couples and one for individuals. And just try to set aside time to work through some of those questions together. Maybe set aside a few times to work through those questions together because, again, I think this helps form our thinking and form our views, but also we want to try to take intentional steps towards being better parents. And I also wanted to say this, that we're not trying to create a culture here where we act like we're perfect parents, or anybody does, or where we judge each other's parenting, or where we're they should have went to the parenting workshop or whatever. At church, we want to be a community of grace and love and building one another up and championing one another and praying for one another when it comes especially to this very, very important topic. So just take that next step. I love this phrase, start where you are, not where you wish you would be. And so keep that in mind as you're talking. Start where you are. Take the next step, not where you wish you were when it comes to this, and take those next steps. Let me pray, and we'll call it. Heavenly Father, I thank you that you're our Father, that you're our ultimate parent, that you're perfect in that you're perfect in all your ways, in all your intentions, in the way you see things, in your wisdom, in your purity, and that the way you parent us is perfect, Lord, and we have been entrusted, or we will be, Lord willing, entrusted with kids, God, and we just want to reflect you to them. And we lay down before you now and confess that we fall short, and that we will fall short, and we just run to the cross and run to Jesus for grace and for forgiveness, and to have our consciences sprinkled clean so we don't have to bear the burden, Lord. I pray that as we leave here, we wouldn't feel burdened by our sin and our shortcomings, because you've taken care of that on the cross, but instead we would feel empowered by the truth and by the Holy Spirit working the truth into our lives to carry out this calling that you have on our life. And Lord, help us. God, you gave us these kids, and so you need to help us. God, you need to guide us. You need to give us wisdom. You need to give us strength when we don't have it. You need to bring relationships into our lives to help us bear this burden. And I just pray that you'd help us be receptive to how you're working in these ways, Lord. Guide us, guide the conversations that will be had maybe over lunch today, or maybe a time this week set aside for this. Guide those conversations, and Lord, may we raise kids that glorify you and do it in a way that glorifies you. And I ask this by the power of the Holy Spirit in Jesus' name. Amen.